So Timothy Dalton returns for his second and final appearance as Ian Fleming's James Bond 007, in this edgier, more dangerous take on the famous secret agent. So let's see how Bond takes his revenge in License to Kill. Vacationing in Miami for his friend Felix Slider's wedding, British secret agent James Bond tags along when the DEA whizzed Slider away to capture the fierce drug lord Franz Sanchez in the Bahamas. Through daring ingenuity, the duo captured the Colombian kingpin in midair, just in time for wedded bliss to take place. Yet it doesn't take long for Sanchez to mount an elaborate underwater escape, aided by DEA turncoat. Sanchez then sees fit to exact his revenge on Felix by dangling him as bait to have his leg chomped off by a shark. When James learns of the drug lord's escape, he discovers Della has been murdered and Felix is in dire condition. Alongside his friend Sharky, Bond investigates an aquarium warehouse to weed out the culprits, but they soon take it with Sanchez's men and send the DEA traitor to be ravaged by the shark that maimed Leiter. However, 007 is confronted by M for his dereliction of duty and has his license to kill revoked. Still, Bond defies orders and escapes the muddle in the affairs of Milton Crest, the drug-running associate of Sanchez. James ruins their drug shipment, fights off a horde of henchmen, and flies off with millions of dollars in drug money. He soon hooks up with Leiter's contact Pam Bouvier, who proves more than capable of fending for herself when Dario, Sanchez's right-hand man, throws things into a melee. Bond and Bouvier soon come to an accord to work together to take down their common enemy. The two jet off to the Republic of Isthmus, where Sanchez has almost total control of the military and government. It is here where Bond poses as a freelance hitman causing waves at Franz's bank and casino. 007 ends up navigating through Hong Kong narcotics agents, while Pam is trying to coax a pair of Stinger missiles away from Sanchez's grasp. Soon he realizes that the unraveling of bonds of loyalty and trust within the drug lord's organization is the best route to revenge. He frames Milton Crest for the stolen drug money, resulting in his horrific demise. Yet the deeper Bond cons his way into Sanchez's confidence, the more dangerous it becomes. Soon James will have to lay waste to everything Sanchez owns in order to avenge his fallen friends. So License to Kill, released July 14th, 1989 in the United Kingdom and United States, was actually the 16th official Bond film produced by Eon Productions, and obviously it followed up from Dalton's debut as Bond in The Living Daylights, which grossed about $191 million worldwide, which outgrossed Roger Moore's final performance in The View to a Kill, which grossed about $150 million, which kind of was on a bit of a steady decline after Moonraker in 1979 hit over $200 million. But License to Kill actually had some extremely stiff competition in the summer of 1989 in the wake of Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, Ghostbusters 2, Batman, and, in the US, being released a week after Lethal Weapon 2. All these films greatly outgrossed License to Kill, grossing over $200 to $300 to $400 million worldwide, making License to Kill a bit of a disappointment and a bit of a thing that just underperformed towards expectations, grossing $156 million at the worldwide box office, which is actually $35 million less than The Living Daylights, of a budget that ranged between $32 to $42 million. We kind of had some troubled things in terms of how the production went along on this whole film, because one thing was that it got impacted by the WGA writer's strike in 1988, so Richard Maybaum, who had screenwriting credits on 12 of the previous 15 Bond films, who was going to develop this one with producer Michael G. Wilson, actually had to stop working on it when they kind of came to a bit of a shift in what they were going to do with this next outing, because they're originally kind of looking towards something a little bit more exotic. They wanted to go off and shoot in China, which had become sort of a thing like no Western production ever shot really in China. And they were kind of doing talks over there and kind of trying to figure out different logistics and see how things could work. But the 1987 film, The Last Emperor, had already kind of taken away a little bit of the novelty of doing that. And they kind of fear like maybe China might end up censoring their script and they wouldn't be able to do certain things they wanted to, have as much creative freedom, and to deal with the government and get free access to different things over there. So started to shift their focus over to Mexico and kind of started thinking about a Colombian cartel sort of revenge tale in a certain way. They kind of work in that way and kind of work much easier down in Mexico than they could up, over in China and stuff like that. So once they figured that out, the WGA strike happened, so kind of couldn't have quite the same team they wanted to working on the script, and kind of ended up going in production in July of 1988. So it was a bit of an impasse, a bit of difficulty there, trying to get things up in the right direction and developing things on the right track. And of course, there were certain things as they were shooting in both Acapulco, Mexico, and also in the Florida Keys and stuff like that. Certain different things did kind of arise where there was a lot of difficulties and real weird type of things happening when I get much later on to the action sequences, the second unit stuff. A lot of difficult type of things came about. But when they're shooting up in Mexico and they got producer Albert Cubby Broccoli coming in on location there, they were so thin and polluted that it really was not doing any favors to his health. And so he really couldn't be as hands-on as he normally was, but because he had built up such a great family of trusted people with the producers and all the technical people, and John Glen, who had been directing all the Bond films since For Your Eyes Only in 1981, they had a very solid system in place to make sure that everything that he wanted the film to be, it would come out that way, even if he couldn't be right there on location supervising everything like that. And it is pretty interesting to look at this film in comparison to The Living Daylights, where they were constantly trying to move towards a more serious, or the original Ian Fleming interpretation of Bond, despite being kind of a regular sort of Bond film. Didn't have a lot of other things that you kind of dig deep into, like the character of Bond, or get a little bit more substance to it. It was a very standard type of Bond film with pretty weak villains. It kind of falls off of that regard, so it doesn't have as much threat to them and not much heavyweight type of things. But with License to Kill, they were definitely writing the whole film directly towards Dalton's strengths, making it a little bit edgy, a little bit darker, a little bit more down into the substance of the core of the character, to get a little bit more rattled. A little bit more of that just overall revenge tale, getting some more personal. I think Bond films really kind of excel when you make it a little bit more of a personal story. And I think that works so well towards the benefit of this film, and the fact that you got such a regular director here. The guy, John Glen, like I said, he's directed every single Bond film in this decade, and he's done such a great, solid piece of work, building himself up, just making good films, just making very solid pieces of work, and knowing how the mechanics of a Bond film work. To get in there, find how it works. And John Glen was like, this is probably his favorite film that he directed. He was so very pleased with how this film came out. He's just extremely happy with how everything just functioned overall. Just like, there's so many things to praise for the film. And his direction is really one of those things that comes together so strongly and so solidly and so confidently. You can see that he has this wide array of filmmaking tools at his disposal. He knows how to use every single one of them to a very good effect. Everything comes off very, very well when you got all the elaborate stuff going on with all the action sequences. He knows how to orchestrate everything. And just getting into this entire cast ensemble for this whole film, there's got some really damn good actors, some really nice roles here, but you got to start with Timothy Dalton as James Bond here, because some people at the time didn't really quite warm up to Dalton very much, and probably still some people today that don't quite have much of an affinity for him. But there's such a whole thing was like they had such a cemented legacy with Roger Moore. He had this wit and charm, this kind of lighthearted, fun, sometimes silly quality with him. That was kind of a bit of an abrupt change, but there's so many fans that are so pleasing about what Dalton did, and there's so much to give credit for him, because with his performance and his portrayal and their direction for the character at this point was bringing it much closer to the original characterization Ian Fleming had written for James Bond, and Dalton does a fantastic job of it. I think there's so much just like in License to Kill, he gets to tap into that so directly with such a merciless performance. Just like, he does have those nice warm moments at the beginning of the film where he's dealing with Felix Slider and Della and Sharky and stuff like that, all the good stuff. But once the plot just gets teared right through his heart, he starts showing off some fantastic, like, dark stuff in this whole film. That's like, it's very compelling. A lot of good sequences where he's just like dealing with the crooked agent or whatnot who turns on them for the $2 million to break out Sanchez. Man, that's cold. Really cold stuff that Roger Moore was very hesitant about doing, even things that even felt a little edgy or cold or something like that. It wasn't quite his style for Bond. Dalton's got no goddamn problems with it, just like he goes right for the throat of these things. I love these moments where just like, you just see that revenge, the sense of revenge, that the vendetta that he has, the personal sensibility he has to rip these guys apart. It starts building as the film goes on. As he gets further and closer towards Sanchez, he sort of builds this entire plot about getting into Isthmus and all this type of stuff and trying to be flashy and be direct and trying to do all these different things. It starts to eat away on him a little bit. It starts to make him a little bit frazzled. He starts getting a little paranoid because you got the entire sequence where he's going to blow the window and take the sniper shot at Sanchez, but he sees Pam Bouvier kind of conspiring or something like that with the colonel. And so when he comes back and stuff like that, he's just paranoid. He jumps on her and kind of threatens her and accuses her and stuff like that. And he's got this great look of being unshaved, and he's just been in the water, so he just has this entire look to him that's just like, it works so well with the intensity of what he directly projects out through the screen. It looks so good, and just like how that entire thing kind of morphs through the entire film, because he's so much on that just focused, laser focused mission. Get Sanchez, kill him, do whatever it is, rip him apart as best I can, whatever it takes, as long as he's dead at the end of the whole thing, doesn't matter. It constantly comes to light that's like, what he's doing is actually jeopardizing other ongoing operations. There's a bigger picture involved where you got the guys in Hong Kong coming after him with the Secret Service from them, with Hiroyuki Tagawa in that role, and he's messing up their plans. And now Pam Bouvier is talking about these Stinger missiles are out there that Sanchez has, and there's a certain thing that they're trying to get those back off the streets and away from Sanchez. So he's not kind of aware of that type of stuff. He's not really thinking outside of the larger picture. He's looking at this very narrow focus type of thing. I like how that gets interjected into his head and begins to formulate a different way of going about it. More subversive. Start taking that sense of loyalty that Sanchez values and start turning it against him. Weaponize the paranoia and get it up on his head that people are turning against him and trying to dismantle him and stuff like that, to try to kind of flip things around. Like the guy who's out to kill him is the one who he thinks is most loyal, but he flips that around behind his back. It's really smart type of things to weave the character Bond around, where he starts out so focused and so blunt force and so just like rampaging the entire thing. Then he gets smart and clever and ingenious, stuff like that, to move that type of stuff around and show what the kind of cleverness of the character can really do in this situation to really exact the best revenge possible. It's a really good type of stuff, and Dalton just brings it all. He's got the physicality to do all the stuff with the stunts. He was very much like, it works so much better when you can actually believe that it's the actual actor as that character in those action sequences. So he wanted to do certain stunts himself and certain other things to be really much in the thick of those sequences to really sell it towards the audience. So he had a lot of good respect for that, a really good, just a work ethic that really kind of melded with the entire style and the pace and the energy of the entire film. I think it came together really well. I just like Dalton. He's got that edge. Still got a little bit of a wit. He can still turn that on here and there, but he's just got such a great handle on the darker, serious elements without kind of sacrificing kind of the charm here and there. Just a little bit of something sprinkled in overall, but he gets a really good sensibility about it, just like it works so well while still having chemistry with his co-stars and stuff like that. I think it really works so perfectly. And playing the villain of the film, Franz Sanchez, is the great Robert Davi. This guy had already been in Raw Deal and Action Jackson and Die Hard. Also, Randall Bush, who plays the other Agent Johnson from Die Hard, also shows up here playing a DEA agent, so kind of a cool thing in that regard. And Davi's great. He's a fantastic villain, just like they gave a villain with a real good, stripped-down edge to him. And there was such a thing with Robert Davi. It's like he was definitely being a method actor. Offset, he was still playing Sanchez. When he walks into a restaurant or a bar or something like that, he's Sanchez. And he was such a thing that he read Casino Royale and read the description of La Chifra in the entire book about him being sort of a dark mirror image of Bond. And you can definitely see how that is played into this whole thing because, just like Bond, he's suave, charming, charismatic. He's a guy who can walk into a room and own the entire thing, moving in and out of scenes just like so well. You can definitely see that dynamic between them. You see so much of how that can work out, and just like, he's just as ruthless. You just see that same level. As ruthless as Bond is, Sanchez even amplifies that further. Just like there's almost like they amplify one another. The more ruthless one gets, the more ruthless the other one has to become. That's such a great type of thing to see, just from that opening sequence where he walks in and the other guy is sleeping with his woman, and just like, it's intimidating as hell, menacing. Oh, it was so goddamn good. Like, they kind of based the entire thing a little bit around the Manuel Noriega thing, which obviously kind of mirrors off in Die Hard 2 the year after this with the Franco Neri character of General Esperanza, but just like this big cartel kingpin kind of owning the entire country or something like that. Everything kind of works through him. You know, there's a president and government and stuff like that. He owns everything. Everyone's on the take. He purchases everyone. He buys everyone. And so they took all this sort of real world type of stuff and kind of integrated it into the entire thing. But Davi just brings such a sinister undercurrent. Just like, I love so much that he's just like not adorned with any gimmicks aside from the iguana. Just a little caveat there. But they don't have any kind of weird type of things going on. It's like, it's the performance that sells everything. Not a weird type of dress or some kind of weird character trait. He's just a ruthless son of a bitch. And it's great. He is so fantastic in this role. As he's always been just like a standard character actor, but he's always been so prominent and recognizable and so good at what he does, he gets to tap into something so great in this whole film. He had a great time doing it and just had some really good stuff to work off with Dalton. Him and Dalton were like right on the level with everything. Doing all the research and looking into things and trying to hone in on all the different dynamics of their characters and all these different things, doing work out fantastically. And of course, he's got one of the best henchmen possible because he's portrayed by Benicio del Toro, one of his earliest roles. I think he maybe has shown up in like a Miami Vice or something like this before this or something like that. But my first watch is like, that's Benicio del Toro as a henchman in a Bond film 6 years before the usual suspects made him a breakout star. And he's fucking awesome in this movie. Playing Dario, this guy he's a sleazy, slimy, scummy son of a bitch. Just like, I love how he's just kind of relishing every single moment. Getting into this character is like, he's such a slithering snake in a certain way. And all the little, how he brandishes the knife, the little switchblade or whatnot. He's got a great body language, how he does it. He's just incorporating little things into things all over the place. And he's talked about the production. He had a great time with it. Works so well with Robert Davi. They have such a great sort of camaraderie on screen. You can see they don't have to speak anything so much to one another. They're just the body language between the two characters, how kind of Sanchez embraces Dario in certain points. You know, there's a certain bond between the two characters. They play something without having to say it. And it's a great thing for two great actors. Obviously, Benicio's gone on to phenomenal work throughout his entire career. Oscars, stuff like that. The guy is an amazing actor. And he was amazing at this point in time, just playing this really nice, scummy role. Love it so much. And of course, they brought back the character of Felix Slider from David Hedison, who had not portrayed the character since Live and Let Die 16 years earlier, opposite Roger Moore. And it's the whole thing where, like, they had such wonky continuity. Felix Slider was always portrayed by a different person every time they brought the character back. And the thing was, in The Living Daylights, they had the character of Felix Slider portrayed by an actor who was 20 years younger than David Hedison, but they wanted to go on this whole thing because they were telling a certain story with Felix Slider. They wanted to have a certain emotional resonance. So they wanted to go back to a certain actor who had a little bit of that. So one, they knew was a good actor. 2 had a little bit of something more than what the actor had in the last film, which was kind of a throwaway scene. 1 had something a little bit more substance, had a little bit more integration into the Bond mythos. So they kind of came back across David Hedison and brought him back in. He was 61 at the time, and Cubby Bright was a little here and there about he might be a little too old to throw in a parachute and throw him out of a freaking airplane or whatnot, but worked out really well because he is a really good actor, brings a great quality to the whole thing, even though he's supposed to be a CIA, now he's a DEA agent. I don't know how that transition works into departmentally and stuff like that, interagency stuff. But regardless of that, loose continuity as it is, he does a really good job to bring that sort of quality into the film where you got everything hinging so much on what happens to him and his bride. I think that comes off very, very well in how all that is handled. He has that natural charisma and chemistry with Timothy Dalton here to show that Felix and James are close friends, are very strong friends. Someone's very loyal to him, that when Felix gets pulled away with the Coast Guard and everything like that to go after Sanchez, James is almost like he's kind of, if he doesn't bring Felix back in one piece, he's going to get chewed out. But it's the whole thing is like he's loyal to him because I'm going to watch over you. I'm going to be there, have your back on this whole thing because I know it's dangerous. I don't want you to go off on this thing when I'm just sitting around doing nothing. So I like that so much. And there's one really nice beat they have Felix Slider bring up. And despite all the loose continuity, there's one thing that they kept threading through every so often. And that was from on Her Majesty's Secret Service when James's wife is killed. You get a little bit of that at the beginning of For Your Eyes Only at the grave of Teresa Bond. And they bring that up here again. Just bring it up like he was married once. It was a long time ago. So I like having that extra emotional beat. Because it informs a little bit of something extra on this thing when James goes in there and finds Bella dead. That's a whole complicated swell of emotion, knowing that they're keeping that in the continuity of Dalton's Bond. So it's I like so much that adds a little bit of extra layer on top of everything else. And also feeling nowhere Felix is going to feel about that as well. Now he has to do something about it. He's got to go off and do this thing. It just further solidifies and makes more concrete what he's doing and why he's doing it, why he's compelled to do it. Not just out of a loyalty to his friend, but because he's been there. And he needs to do something about the entire situation. I like so much how that just does something extra for it. Really gets me up going. And got some Bond girls here. We've got Carey Lowell, who I much more know from later on when she was a regular on Law and Order in the late 90s as Jamie Ross of the District Attorney's Office. She actually kind of had a weird thing. It was they didn't have the script finished probably because of the writer's strike type of thing causing problems. So she kind of auditioned off of lines from A View to a Kill that Tanya Roberts was probably saying in the whole film. So kind of odd thing is you're auditioning for one role, but the script they're giving you has nothing to do with the role you're auditioning for, so it's kind of a strange thing, but obviously she got the role very well. And I think she does a good job in this whole thing. Her character, Pam Bouvier, does have her own sense of agency in the entire thing. She's not a pushover, she's not having to rely on Bond or stuff like that. She goes out of her way for certain things. When Bond tells her to stay behind and let him go off for things himself, she constantly kind of goes up and does her own thing. She kind of has her own intelligence, her own sort of place in the story in a certain way. She's going off and doing things without having Bond tell her to do things, or relying on her to do things, or she's being some kind of damsel in distress. She has a good sense of agency. I think Carey Lowell does a good job. Fortunately, I don't think she really gets too strongly remembered in the pantheon of Bond girls because they've got some really fantastic ones overall. Just it was a good role that had a good sensibility about it. I don't think there was enough strong material to really kind of amplify it and make it stand out from the pack of everyone else. But you also got Talisa Soto here as Lupe, who just has a lot less agency. She is kind of the only thing she has really good in the whole film is that she knows what Bond is doing, because she saw Bond when they were at the beginning of the film and they're going after Sanchez and he's with Felix Slider and stuff like that. So she knows that he's not what he's telling Sanchez he is. So there's kind of a duplicity to kind of play there and kind of see where that's going to land. Is she going to be loyal to Sanchez? Is it going to be kind of more loyal towards Bond in a certain way? Is there going to be something here and there? And there's kind of the interesting thing is I'm not fully convinced of the romanticized angle between any one of them. I don't think there's quite enough built into it. I think Dalton and Lowell play things very nicely. I don't think the story really kind of made it feel like there really was much of a romance there. There's a certain banter, certain things, and a little bit of make-out here and there. I don't think they really kind of solidified that to make a really strong element to have him at the end of the film kind of, I got to jump over the freaking balcony into the pool and make a big splash, literally and figuratively, to kind of win her back over in a certain way. So I don't think either one really kind of hit off as great of a romanticized relationship in a certain way. I think there's a little bit of a weak element there that they were trying to go for. I don't think it quite developed very well in the whole film, but I think everything else that does go forward with the actors and the characters of the entire film come off very well in terms of the revenge story and the main plot of the entire film. I think that comes off very well, just like those other elements didn't quite hit off, but got some other really nice supporting actors here. Anthony Zerbe as Milton Kress, who is actually a character from the Ian Fleming short story, The Hildebrandt Rarity, and also got Frank McRae here as Sharky. I just like, Frank McRae was always such a great actor. He was in like 48 Hours and Loaded Weapon 1 and Last Action Hero. Always a fun, bright personality to ever have in a film. Does a great job. I like Sharky overall, just like the little moments they get with him. Just a really strong bond with him and James. Really good stuff on that regard. And a little something else they brought over from another novel was actually from the Live and Let Die novel that didn't make it into the film, was the entire thing of Felix Slider's leg getting chomped off by the shark. So they kind of brought back little elements here and there. It's like, we pick here, because there's certain things that kind of fit in the story from this character or this moment here and there we can integrate here. So they always kind of did that throughout the entire course of the franchise. Like, we're dipping some things from the novel, but not everything here or not everything there, or we're just taking the name from it and putting on a different story. So they always kind of pick and choose the little things off the shelf of the Ian Fleming stories to kind of mix into the blend of the entire film whenever they were making a new story or something like that. So that's a really kind of nice type of thing. And I just think they put together a really fine cast where there's some really nice roles all together to really kind of drive home the story. But some really cool type of thing is that they got Michael Kamen to do the score for this thing, because Kamen had done The Dead Zone and Brazil and Die Hard and Lethal Weapon and Highlander, all these wonderful things, and continue to go on to do wonderful things after this. But John Barry, who had regularly done the Bond scores, was undergoing a throat surgery at the time, so was not available. So awesome getting Kamen, because the Kamen score is absolutely phenomenal, but has never been released in its complete form. It's only a couple of tracks on the official soundtrack. They've never released an expanded version of it. Got some bootlegs here and there, but the fact of the matter is, Kamen puts together a really damn good, nice new flavor to the entire score. It's just like there's so much of a different kind of approach to his musicianship than had been done before. Just like, I just like a Michael Kamen score. He has such a sensibility that it feels a little bit more, slightly more operatic, slightly bigger, slightly different than any other action scores out there. Just had a certain quality that brought in different influences and different things going on. Just didn't feel like every other action score out there. Just had a certain sensibility that he just added so many different flavors and different things going on. I like it so much. I like what he does with Bond here. Really good type of thing. The only time he ever stepped into the franchise, but I think he did a really fine job of it. And of course, we got the Gladys Knight song opening up the film, License to Kill, and we also got a Patti LaBelle song that kind of finishes the entire film. They're both kind of romanticized type of songs, and kind of fits where, like, okay, the beginning of the film, you got the wedding and stuff like that, and there's kind of Felix is getting married and stuff like that, so it works for that. And of course, at the end of the film, Pam and James and whatnot, they're getting friendly with one another in the pool and all that type of stuff. So it works for those moments, but when you kind of think of the movie License to Kill, it's a hard-edged, kind of big, bombastic, badass action film. It's like it quite doesn't reflect what the rest of the film is. It kind of reflects just those moments in the story there that don't really kind of encompass the entire rest of the 2-hour narrative that they wrap around. So it's kind of they're both kind of, they're good songs. They're really kind of nice songs. I don't love them. I do kind of prefer ones that have a little bit more of a driving quality to them, stuff like that. And of course, you always got all the classic Shirley Bassey type of things that are a little more lush and big and stuff like that. So, kind of the interesting thing, Kamen did 4 films that came out in the summer of 1989. He did Roadhouse, Renegades, Lethal Weapon 2, and then this. So it was like, within like, all these films came out within like a 2-month span. From like May to July, all these films came out. So he's kind of working back to back to back to back almost on this type of stuff. So He still did fantastic work. Lethal Weapon 2 sounds fantastic, and Roadhouse is a fucking awesome movie, regardless of anything else. And this one came off absolutely beautifully with what he did on this whole thing. Really like his work on this. And like I said, director John Glen utilized all the different tools possible to achieve what he needed to in this film to create some phenomenal inventive action sequences. Just the stunt work in this film is just absolutely crazy to me. Just like, to do so many things. I mean, today, as we know, like, everything done on green screens where it's just a lot safer and various other things, but seeing what they did on this film, where they had multiple units working on land, air, and sea, all the stuff they went on this thing, just to create, even just a single action sequence. You can go through this entire film and just like, it's amazing stuff they put together here. I love all the stuff at the beginning of the film where they're going up in the sky and trying to snag Sanchez, and Bond drops down from the little tow line or whatnot and wraps it around the wing of the plane. That's a great opening sequence. That's a great thing. And they used a lot of things like, okay, when is actually Timothy Dalton in the harness and everything like that, he's maybe like maybe 30 feet off the ground or something like that. They're shooting kind of low to the ground and everything, kind of shooting with the chopper just kind of hovering above the ground a little bit. But they did a lot of the aerial stuff just practically, as you can see, with the wide shots and stuff like that. Wonderful stunt people involved with that regard. I love so much when you get an entire thing where Bond is going in and he's going to get up on the boat and everything like that and ruin the drug ship and stuff like that. That entire sequence is just incredible. That's the entire thing how it starts on the boat, got a little bit of stuff going on with that, but then he goes under the sea. And you got the stuff going on with the guys on the scuba stuff, and they're doing fight scenes down there, and he goes up, and does the entire water ski thing, which was a phenomenal type of thing where they had some of that was Dalton with his special rig, but then they had the actual stunt guy doing a much more elaborate sequence in a certain way. So they got all that stuff with the water ski, and then he gets up on the goddamn plane and all these other things. It's like, that's an amazing sequence that required several different units working in different places and working it from below the sea all the way up into the sky, stuff like that. That's incredible. And it's all done practically. There's not a single green screen shot. There's no model work involved with it. It's all just shooting it the right way with the right stunt people, right choreography, all the things in the right place, the right time to just make a phenomenal sequence. I love that sequence. It's so goddamn good and so energetic and dynamic in such a way as like, none of our films were quite doing something quite that elaborate. So Bond films, even though I did have some things in like how the look of the films and certain other things with the action and various other things with the Bond films were so little traditional, they still how to make very elaborate and kind of epic stunt sequences, stuff like that. The action sequences still came off so much better because, again, Dalton was able to actually get into the thick of things, be there in the moment, on set and on location, kind of getting into the rigs and do things himself to make sure that it seemed real and believable on screen. I think that a lot of that just benefited the film so very much. They were so very much able to do that and so willing to get into that, even though Cubby Broccoli had a few kind of reservations, getting like, get Dalton out of that goddamn harness hanging off the freaking plane or something like that. Regardless of that, all that stuff comes together so well. And all the stuff you get going on later in the film, towards this climax, is just crazy. How they got these Kenworth trucks, where they contacted Kenworth, like, we need these specific types of trucks to do these specific types of things for the stunt sequences in the film. And so they created at least 3 different ones. One that was kind of regular, one that could do the Papa Wheelie type of thing when Bond goes to the fire, and the one where they could be driven from someone from the back seat. Like when Carey Lowell drives up after everything's kind of gone to dust, they had a guy behind in the cab driving the thing while she's up front, so she didn't really have to do anything. So that is all these different things with the stunts, and that finale is incredible to me. Just like everything to do. The explosions, for one, are absolutely just out of control. They just keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger as the whole sequence goes on, and they start out pretty freaking huge to begin with. And it's like everything they do is like they had fantastic stunt drivers and stuff like that, but as I alluded to earlier, there were a lot of kind of odd, strange kind of setbacks and weird things happening. Apparently, there was a lot of like local talk about certain unnatural type of things that happened along this stretch of road they're shooting this stunt sequence in. Like, there's certain unfortunate things that happened over a long course of time along these kilometers or whatnot. on this road that just kind of started manifesting in weird type of ways, like little accidents, weird strange things, and a weird photograph they got on the last explosion that kind of gave them a little bit of a chill, and it's like, and stuff like that. They're just really, really unsettling type of things that kept happening, and the little injuries that occurred, and weird, just odd little occurrences that befell things, but thankfully people mostly got through unscathed and got the whole thing done and all that stuff shot. But how it all just comes together with all the action in this entire film, it's just slam bang. I think it's one of the, up to this point, I think it was probably one of the best pieces of action that the Bond series had ever put together. Just like, they're very ambitious what they want to do, because they'd always been kind of elaborate and stuff like that, but they were just pushing it with just like stunts and pyrotechnics and very particular type of things they wanted to do. Just like, it's amazing. The stunt team they put together for this whole thing and all the second unit stuff is just out of this world good. So goddamn amazing how all of it just all comes together in terms of like the editing and the cinematography and the choreography, all these different things. It's all put together so perfectly. There's not a flaw anywhere. Just like how everything just aids the story overall. Because that's the main thing. You can have all the best action, but if it doesn't aid the story properly, it doesn't come off very well. And some Bond films may be a little more indulgent with the action. They get a little bit overlong with certain sequences, and they kind of shortchange things here and there. But I think they've got a good, strong story at the core of this thing, with Bond going after revenge and going through the kind of phases he has to go through in terms of being very personally driven and kind of being reckless in a certain way, and then kind of going for a much more clever, subversive type of way to dismantle Sanchez's entire organization and stuff like that, and getting up to that, just the finale of it all alone is just incredible how that pays off towards the end of it. I love so much. They set up the little lighter thing at the beginning of the film from Della and Felix to Bond. I like that little setup. I love the payoff. Where just like, he doesn't have to say anything, he just says to Sanchez, "Don't you want to know why?" And he just shows the little lighter and burns him alive. And then a giant explosion happens. Like, that's pretty cathartic. That's pretty cathartic. He got exactly what he deserved. Bond did it with a certain level of style, but still maintained the grit that Dalton was bringing to the role, just like the little touches there. I like so much how they went along with the revenge story and kind of turned things on its head a little bit for Sanchez's organization. They're turning that strict loyalty he has. Like, loyalty is more important than money. And so you kind of twist that around here and there and everywhere. So it's like, I like so much how all that stuff goes along. But you could kind of say, like, okay, you could have gotten a little deeper. You could have gotten a little deeper with the character of Bond here and there and just hit more touches here and there. More things that kind of give a little bit more nuance, a little more sprinkles of certain things. Of course, they got a few little sillier elements. Obviously, you got Wayne Newton as Professor Joe Butcher, who's kind of like this front for this entire like laundering scheme or whatnot for all the cocaine and stuff like that. So Wayne Newton really he always wanted to be in a Bond film, so he was just happy to be there. It's a slightly comedic role in a certain way, but it works very well. He's enjoying the time. He's not kind of pulling things too far away from it, but there are certain more comical touches, like, of course, the Hong Kong agents all have to be ninjas, because it's a little stereotypical and a little silly on that regard. And a few little things, you probably could have cut out the entire thing with the Hong Kong agents and stuff like that to make it a little tighter here and there, but it does kind of aid towards Bond kind of wrapping the entire deception around Sanchez, getting in closer with him, use that entire situation as like, oh, this was a hit squad or something like that, and they thought I'd rat on them to you and kind of expose them, stuff like that. So he uses that towards his advantage, but there are a few like minor superfluous things that do kind of pull away from the darker edge the film is going for, obviously, when you get Q involved, and you got some goofy gadgets as they kind of feel like they're obligated to put in. If you didn't have Q in there, Desmond and Llewelyn getting in there, you had to shortchange the fans in a certain way. So there's a few caveats they make for the overall franchise and the fans and stuff like that, and kind of pulls away a little bit from the harder, darker edge, I think. Definitely like GoldenEye, and certainly a lot of the Craig films really kind of hit a much more strong balance towards that regard. But overall, I just think License to Kill just hit really good beats. I'd really like to hear what you guys feel about Dalton in the pantheon of James Bond, because, again, as much as this film is, his entire kind of stature and the entire thing kind of moves up and down for all different types of people, what your taste is and what your flavor is, and how well you react to the films he was in, because, again, I think they both do have flaws to them, I don't think he really got to do the perfect one he probably could have done, but I think his performance really added something very vital to the sustainability of the Bond franchise to show that you could pull it back, get a little more edgy, get a little more serious on it, and so find something that could end up being later on far more successful. Obviously, the Craig films have really done that and really gone off in a certain way to bring that more serious edge to it, a little bit more dramatic to the entire makeup of the entire franchise. It made it extremely successful. So Dalton really laid the groundwork for a lot of that in these films. I think are still very good. Just have a little caveats and stuff like that. They could have made them a little stronger, a little bit more tighter, a little bit more formed up in a certain way. But I still think License to Kill itself is a good, solid piece of action with a lot of good actors in it and a lot of great things to its credit. So thanks so much, guys. I know it's the whole thing like the film was originally titled License Revoked, and they kind of changed the title to License to Kill almost at the last minute. And that's why a lot of the posters for the entire film look so fucking bad, because they didn't have enough time to get all the stuff changed for all the designs and the marketing and stuff like that. So they kind of half-assed it at the last minute. So that's why a lot of the marketing materials don't look very good, and probably also kind of was a bit of a detriment to the performance of the film at the box office. So a lot of little things and how things kind of got off on a little rocky start for the entire film, but I still think it came off really, really well. But it was nice that they kind of decided to not go into the summer movie season anymore after this. But Bond has lived on and continued to be strong and do all these wonderful things. So thanks so much, guys. Take care. Bye-bye.